Hi, I'm sending this to your blog because I don't know who else would even read it without making it worse for me. I live alone in a small apartment over a laundromat. I work from home most days doing billing for a contractor. I'm not into paranormal stuff. I don't drink much. I'm the kind of person who keeps receipts and updates his passwords. I say that because what I'm describing is not a feeling or a mood. It's a set of events with timestamps, logs, and physical evidence. This started after I streamed a shock movie late at night. I'm not going to name it because I don't want anybody to go looking for it. It wasn't on a mainstream service. I found it through a link in a forum thread about banned films. I had to use a browser and click through one of those sketchy pages with a fake play button. I knew better. I did it anyway. I was tired, bored, and feeling mean in that way you do when you've been doom scrolling too long. I watched some of it. I didn't make it all the way through. It wasn't supernatural or anything, just disgusting and staged to look real. It had a few scenes that were clearly meant to make you feel dirty for having eyes. I shut my laptop and went to bed with that gross, jittery feeling you get after watching something you shouldn't. The next morning, I went into my bathroom and noticed the sink looked used. Not my roommate used it because I don't have one, but like I had been at it. The faucet was damp around the base. My hand soap was open. There were faint white scrub marks inside the basin like someone had taken the abrasive side of a sponge to it. I also noticed my hands smelled wrong. Not sweat, not food, something chemical, like disinfectant mixed with a kind of sour metal smell. I washed my hands, I used my normal soap, then dish soap, then I scrubbed with a little baking soda. The smell didn't leave right away. It faded through the day, then came back hard that night when I went to brush my teeth. It was on my fingers again like it had been waiting. The second thing I noticed was on my laptop. I keep my machine pretty clean. I close tabs. I don't leave videos playing. When I opened my browser that morning, there was a continue watching tile on the streaming page. It was positioned right where I'd left off. That part wasn't weird. What was weird was the history entry that showed a playback session starting in the middle of the night. The start time was a little after the hour when I usually fall asleep. The end time was a little before my alarm. It wasn't like the movie played all night. It was a short chunk, the worst chunk, the scenes I remember shutting it off to avoid. I live alone. My laptop was closed. There is no one else with my password. I checked my account activity. No other logins. Just my own IP. Just my machine. I did the usual stuff. I changed passwords. I enabled extra login verification. I ran antivirus. I checked for remote access software. I looked at my router logs. I didn't see anything obvious. I unplugged the laptop at night. That should have ended it. That night I woke up with my hands under my pillow, and that chemical stink was there again, strong enough to make my stomach turn. I got up and went into the bathroom. The sink had fresh scrub marks. Not random scratches, but concentrated in the same places like someone was trying to erase evidence. The sponge I keep under the sink was damp and smelled like bleach, even though I don't use bleach on it. In the morning I checked my phone. I hadn't used it during the night. I keep it on the nightstand. The battery was lower than it should have been. In the settings menu, there's a screen time and battery activity chart. It showed the video site had been active in the night for a short span at the same fixed time window as the night before. I didn't click anything. I didn't watch, but it marked it as playback. There was even a little thumbnail preview in the app switcher history, just a blurred frame, but I knew what scene it came from. That was when I realized there was a schedule to it. Every night after that, it happened at the same time. Not approximate. Exact. Within a minute or so, the playback would start. It didn't matter what I did with my devices. If I left the laptop off and in a drawer, the phone would log it. If I powered the phone down, the The tablet would show the activity in its system usage. If I disconnected the router, I'd still find a local media player entry in one of my devices, like it had played something cached. The content was always the same part of the same movie, and always the parts that made me slam it shut. I started writing it down on paper because I didn't trust digital notes. I made a little chart with days and what device showed what. I also wrote down the physical stuff: smell intensity, where the scrub marks were, whether the faucet was damp. The scrub marks became the most consistent indicator, more consistent than the device logs. My bathroom sink is a cheap porcelain unit with a couple of tiny chips near the drain. I know what it looks like. After each night, there would be new cloudy arcs around the drain and along the inside curve, like someone had taken a scouring pad in circles. The sponge would be wet. Sometimes the towel would be moved slightly from where I left it. The smell on my hands would linger even after washing, like it had soaked into the lines of my skin. The smell itself became predictable, too. It wasn't just chemical. It had layers. First a sharp disinfectant note, then a sweet solvent smell, and finally this faint burnt plastic odor that clung to my fingernails. I tried to break the pattern. I set an alarm for that time window and forced myself to stay awake. I sat on my couch with the lights on, phone and laptop on the coffee table, both screens visible. I opened unrelated apps. I played music. I watched the clock like I was on a stakeout. When the time hit, my phone screen turned on by itself, not a notification. The screen lit as if it had been lifted, but it stayed flat on the table. The streaming page loaded in the browser, then the video started without sound. I didn't touch it. I watched my own hands to prove I wasn't sleepwalking. My hands were clenched in my lap. I could see my nails digging into my palms. The video played for a short burst, then stopped. Right after it stopped, the smell hit me. It came like a wave, as if it had been released. I held my hands up and sniffed them. The disinfectant stink was already there. I ran to the bathroom. The sink was dry. No fresh scrub marks yet. I stood there waiting, like an idiot, and after a bit I heard a faint sound that I first thought was the building settling. It was the softest scuffing sound, like a sponge dragging on porcelain. It lasted only a moment. When I leaned in, there were new scrub arcs by the drain, wet and cloudy. The sponge under the sink was damp. I hadn't opened the cabinet. I didn't call the police. I know how that sounds. I didn't have a break-in. I didn't have a person. I had a playback log and a wet sponge. I did call my landlord. I asked if maintenance ever came in overnight. He laughed and said no. I changed the locks anyway, paid for it myself. I put a strip of painter's tape across the bathroom cabinet door and another across the front door, so I'd know if anything opened. The next morning, the tape on the front door was intact. The tape on the cabinet was intact. The sponge was damp again. The sink had new scrub marks. My hands smelled like solvent and disinfectant. I bought a cheap motion camera and set it in the bathroom aimed at the sink. I didn't connect it to the internet. I just wanted local footage. That night, the camera recorded until the moment the playback would normally start. Then the file corrupted. The file length was there. The timestamp was there. When I played it back, it froze on a single frame of my empty bathroom and then skipped to the end. On my phone, the battery graph showed the browser active during that same window. On my laptop, the operating system event log showed the lid had been opened and closed. I was asleep in bed and the laptop was in a different room, and I had stacked a couple of books on top of it to see if it moved. The books were still stacked in the morning. I moved the devices out of my apartment. One night I left my phone in my car, powered down, in the glove compartment. I left the laptop at my friend's place across town, shut down. I left the tablet in my work bag and brought it into the office the next day. I thought I was being smart. The next morning, I woke up to that smell on my hands anyway. The sink had scrub marks anyway. The sponge was damp anyway. At work, when I opened my tablet, it had a new, recently played entry in the browser history. It listed the same site and the same time window, even though it had been in my bag in a different building. I checked my car that afternoon. My phone, which I had powered down, was warm. There was a battery drain indicator when I turned it on. It showed activity during the same fixed time. Not a notification, not a call. The browser. I stopped showering at night because the smell made me gag, and I didn't want to be in the bathroom longer than necessary. I started wearing thin, disposable gloves around the apartment. I know that's not normal. I just didn't want whatever was on my hands to get on my food or my bedding. The gloves didn't help. In the morning, I would take them off, and my bare skin would still have that disinfectant solvent smell. The gloves themselves would smell like it too, especially around the fingertips, like the odor had been applied from the inside. The worst change is that the scrub marks spread. At first, it was just the sink, then the bathtub, then the tiles around the drain. Not like a person cleaning a whole bathroom, but like someone focused on small specific areas and returning to them in a methodical loop. Each morning I'd find one new patch, always in the same kind of circular scoured pattern, always with that cloudy look you get when you've taken the glaze off. My bathroom looks older now. The finish is damaged in places. The sink has a permanent dull ring around the drain that wasn't there before. And the content of the replays started to change. For a while, it was always the same segment of the same shock movie. Then one morning I found a different thumbnail in the browser history. A related clip from the same site, labeled like an extra. I did not click it. I never clicked it. But it showed a short playback window at the same time. The next night it replayed the original scene again. The night after that, it replayed a different one. It's like it's cycling through a playlist, or testing what I can stand, or just working down a list. I tried to delete everything associated with it. I cleared history, cache, cookies. I reset browsers. I factory reset my phone. I replaced my router. I even bought a cheap new phone with a new account and left it on a shelf, unused. The new phone, with no logins and no history, still showed a spike in activity during that time window after its first night in my apartment. It didn't list the site by name, but it listed the browser as active and the screen as on, while the device was sitting face down. When I turned it over, the browser was open to a blank page, as if something had been closed quickly. I cannot stress enough. This is not me waking up and doing it. I tested myself. I put tape across my bedroom door. I sprinkled a thin layer of powder on the bathroom threshold. In the morning, the tape was unbroken. The powder was undisturbed. The sink had fresh scrub arcs. My hands smelled like disinfectant and burnt plastic. Whatever is happening, it does not require my body to get up and do the cleaning, but the results land on me. The replay is logged like I watched it, and the disgust part is always there like a second component. It's as if the system has two outputs, the playback record on my devices and the cleaning residue on my hands and fixtures. I started staying with my sister for a few nights. I didn't tell her why. I brought no devices except a prepaid phone I left in the car. I slept on her couch. The time window came and went. Nothing happened at her place. I thought it was over. When I came back to my apartment, the smell hit me as soon as I opened the door, like the chemical stink had been sealed inside. The bathroom sink was visibly scoured, more than before. The sponge under the sink was shredded at one corner like it had been used too hard. My hands started smelling before I even touched anything, within minutes of being back. On my laptop, which had been shut down and unplugged, there was a new system event entry indicating a wake and sleep cycle during that same fixed time window for each night I was gone. I know because I checked the log. It wasn't just one night. It was every night, like it kept the schedule whether I was here or not. So now I'm stuck with two options that both feel bad. Either leave and let it keep running in my empty apartment, or stay and keep getting tagged with the smell and the scrub marks. I'm writing you because I need somewhere to put this that isn't my own notes. I'm not asking you to post my name. I'm not trying to get attention. I want other people to tell me if they've had anything like a fixed nightly replay that they didn't initiate, paired with this specific kind of chemical cleaning residue. I haven't watched anything like that since. I don't even watch normal movies at night anymore. I keep my screens dark. I keep my hands clean. But every night, the same time window comes, and something makes sure the logs show the worst parts, and something makes sure I carry the cleanup. If you do post this, please don't link to any films or sites. I don't want this spreading. And if somebody messages you saying it's just malware, ask them to explain the scrub marks, the damp sponge, and why my hands stink like disinfectant at the exact same time every night, even when my devices are out of the apartment. Tonight, I'm going to put a clean, dry bar of soap in a sealed bag and leave it on the bathroom counter as a marker. I'm also going to wear cotton gloves, taped at the wrist, and sleep with my hands outside the blanket. I'm doing it like a procedure now because whatever this is, it's a procedure too. I don't know what happens if the schedule keeps expanding. I don't know what happens when it runs out of clips. I do know that every morning the porcelain looks a little more worn, and my hands smell a little more like someone else's cleaning job.